Considered one of the greatest advances in night vision tech, the AN PVS14 and MX1169 image intensifier tube are the result of years of nighttime operational experience and studies done by the U.S. Army. Developed in the mid-1990s and deployed around 1999, these are the standard NATO forces night vision monocular. Currently, these monoculars go for around $2,000 used and are the best value night vision option on the American market. While this is a buyer's guide, it is meant for people with a pre-existing or intermediate knowledge on night vision. This will go into nuances between PVS14 housings, clear up misconceptions on Omni tube performance data, and more. You don't need to know anything about Omni tubes before watching, but I would say an understanding of the basics of analog night vision is needed to fully get the most out of this in-depth video. If you don't know what a spec sheet is or 10160 is, I would learn the basics to heart first. Please watch to the end, as all information in this video is extremely useful and some of the most important stuff is last. We will talk more about tube performance, identification, and how not to get scammed later in this video. But first, what are you getting with the Omni PVS14? First of all, in this price range, you are getting a Omni 5 to Omni 8 Generation 3 image intensifier tube. These tubes perform pretty dang well, and in my experience have nearly the same operational capacity as high-end tubes. In ultra-low light, these beat out nearly all Gen 2 Plus tubes, especially at this price point. These have served the US military for years in all sorts of conditions and work very well. Over 500,000 of these have been made, and several of these contracts are still being fulfilled and fielded by the forces that have been known to own the night. These tubes will let you move, shoot, drive, and do anything you want to in the dark. People fly planes and helicopters under these tubes. These tubes are installed in Milspec PVS14 housings. Once again, we'll talk about the different types of PVS14 housings later, but they all do the same thing with the same controls. These get around 40 to 50 hours of battery life off a single AA. There is a manual gain knob at the front of the housing and a power knob on the back. Clicking the knob clockwise once turns it on. To activate the built-in IR illuminator, pull out on the knob and twist again. A small red light will become visible inside the tube to let you know that the IR illuminator is on. While they might be slightly heavy compared to new options, they are the industry standard monocular housing, and for good reason. These are rugged, feature-rich, and easy to use with a fantastic aftermarket. If you are buying a full Milspec PVS14 like you should, you will get Milspec Glass with it. This glass is fantastic and the industry standard. There really is nothing better than it till you break around the $10,000 to $12,000 price range. As these have been in service for over 25 years, there are plenty of different performance specifications under different omnibus contracts. The only way to truly know an Omni tube specification is to know the specifications mandated in the contract the tube is part of. Sadly, for 11769 PVS14 tubes, we do not know the minimum specs of each contract despite common belief. Omni is not a performance specification. It is a large announcement in which multiple small contracts for tubes, each with their own performance minimums, must be fulfilled. Because of this, knowing which Omni a 11769 is from is not as important as the CAD when it comes to an estimation of performance. CAD and all of these other values can be found by putting the diopter to +2 and gazing into the eyepiece or removing the ocular lens. Look on the outside of the phosphor screen. The CAD is the contract acceptance date. The first 2 digits are the year and the last 2 are the week in which it was made. Ideally, this is really the only thing that matters a lot. Generally, the higher the CAD, the better the tube, and the longer it will last. Ideally, you want something made in the last 8 years or so, but all tubes made after 2010 are pretty well regarded as great tubes, and really anything made after 2000 is more than usable and still fantastic. A more recent CAD does not guarantee higher specs or a longer lifespan, though it is still best practice to grab a recently made tube. While CAD can help, there are still 2 other numbers that matter and are good to know: contract number and MFR. Contract number. This lets you know which Omni family a tube is part of. While this doesn't let you know performance, it does give a very good estimation of what features an Omni tube has. Using either the AUNV or wiki forms linked in the description, cross-reference the contract number on your tube with the Omni number. Remember, the performance mins given on those data sheets are not for PVS14s, they are for aviation tubes. We are discussing 11769s. If the tube is from Omni 7 or 8, it is thin-filmed and auto-gating. If it is from Omni 6, it is most likely thin-filmed and auto-gating. It is Omni 4 or 5, it can either be thin-film gated or thick-film non-gated. Along with this, just knowing which Omni family your tube belongs to is nice information to have when referencing it quickly. MFR designates the manufacturer of the tube. 13567 is Elbit and the companies that eventually became Elbit. 55311 is L3 and the companies that eventually became L3. In a practical sense, this does not matter up until more recent Omni 8 tubes or anything with a roughly 2019 CAD. Most people claim that the L308s perform better than the Elbit ones. While this has not been scientifically proven on a large scale, this is reflected in my personal experiences and the tube prices, with L308s being the most expensive Omni contract tubes on the used market. Thank you to MWNVG.com for providing housings and glass, and a major thanks to KJIndustries.com for providing 3 of the tubes for this. Both of them are fantastic people to work with and buy envy from, and made these critical segments possible. With that out of the way, and before we get into housing, glass, and how not to get scammed, here are the tubes being used in the performance showcase. The first tube in the Omni lineup is an ITT 10160A. These are technically Omni aviation contract tubes and are not used in Milspec PVS14s, but occasionally you will run into these installed inside PVS14s. As this is an aviation tube, we actually do know the minimum specs, which are listed on screen. These are thick film non-gated auto gain tubes, and should be pretty comparable to Omni 4 and Omni 5 11769s, as those are thick film non-gated. This particular one was made in 2005 and has some funky blems. This will represent the low and older end of Omni tubes. The second tube is an Elbit Omni 7. This one was made in 2006. The third tube is my personal Elbit Omni 8. This one was made in 2018. The last tube is an L3 Omni 8. This was made after 2020. All of these are in PVS14 housings with new Fuji glass, except my personal Elbit Omni 8, which has a Fuji objective with their older coating and a Q-Optique eyepiece. As all glass is Milspec, this really shouldn't affect performance much at all. I will include some of my other non-Omni tubes a few times as well. Here is what info will beware. If you want or need quick access to that performance comparison, it will be up and live on my second channel around a week after this video goes up. There are a few different types of PVS14 housings. This is rarely talked about because 95% of commercial night vision uses Carson or Noctis housings. In the surplus market, you will run into both factory L3, Elbit, and ITT double battery housings. While all of these housings have the same controls, it is generally accepted that the L3 and Elbit housings are higher quality than the rest. There is nothing wrong with the Carson and Noctis housings, and they are still great Milspec certified housings. While the ITT housing is still serviceable and works fine, the battery cap has a reputation of breaking, it's heavier than the rest, and generally signifies an older tube, so I would avoid it unless you're getting a decent discount. I have personally used all of these except the L3, and I really like them all. I find the old double bat ones neat. The Elbit ones are my personal favorite. If it is any Milspec battery compartment, especially L3, Elbit, or Carson, you are more than fine. Last thing to note, the battery packs, or lowers, are interchangeable between uppers, meaning you could install a 20-year-old ITT lower on a brand new Carson upper if you wanted to. As previously stated, surplus PVS14s should come with Milspec Glass. Real Milspec Glass is marked with a cage code here. There are many different Milspec cage codes. Some of the most common ones are those on screen. All of those cage codes have used Fuji, Key Optic, or Edmund glass. Currently, all Noctis or Carson housings and a majority of Milspec devices use either Fuji or Key Optic glass, and it is the standard. Fuji objectives have a single line of knurling and two distinct holes outside of the lens. Older Fuji optics have a lighter coating, while the newer ones have a much darker coating. Performance between the two are nearly identical. Key Optic objectives have two lines of knurling with two cut holes outside of the lens. Fuji oculars have a orangish yellow coating, while Key Optics have a purple coating. Edmund Optics made PVS14 optics for a short time, and these are often considered the absolute best PVS14 style optics. These are extremely rare and generally fetch a premium. I wouldn't chase after these, but if you find some in the wild at a good price, grab it. Edmund objectives have two lines of knurling and an arch on either side of the lens. The oculars have a distinct blue tint to them. Another company called Salvo also makes Milspec PVS14 eyepieces, as well as commercial lenses. These are generally not used in surplus devices. These can be identified by the colorless ocular and the two distinct notches. With there being a mix of commercial and Milspec optics from Salvo on the market, and the general consensus that all other Milspec optics outperform them, I wouldn't pay Fuji or Key Optic prices for them. They are not bad, there are just better options. Remember, all of these should be marked with a cage code. If the glass does not match one of those descriptions, it is likely not true Milspec glass. If the optics are not true Milspec, that should be reflected in the price with a semi-decent discount of $100 or $200 depending on the type of glass. This photo from Op4 can be used to identify other non-Milspec PVS14 objective clones. OE or Optronic is generally considered better than ADI. Cold Harbor Supply has a fantastic video comparing OE glass to Carson. For a while, Steel Industries and Nightline sold unmarked glass that had the rough appearance of a Key Optic objective. These can be easily identified by the slots on the front of the lens and the lack of a cage code. These perform fine from what I've heard, but not as good as true Milspec. There are a lot of Chinese clones and optics on the market. Most of them, with the exception of Argus, are not great. Watch out for them and do your research before purchasing. A large part of the value of a surplus 14 is the amazing glass, so if you're not getting it, make sure you're getting a small discount at least. Before cons and final notes, let's talk about some important things to know before purchasing an Omni PVS14. Blems. If you're looking into an Omni tube, never buy it without a picture through the device. Blems are semi-common on the Omni market and a majority of the time completely fine. Use your own judgment on what you are comfortable running, but if you're spending $2,000, you should be able to get a pretty clean device. For semi-transparent Blems, you can try black boxing to get rid of them. This involves turning on the device and leaving it in an extremely dark room or box. I will leave a link to a tutorial on this for those interested. This works okay, but it is not at all consistent. I would not count on black boxing to make a tube usable. There are two types of Blems to watch out for, as both drastically decrease the life of the tube and can grow. First, emission points or EPs. These are bright spots on the tube that don't go away even when the tube is in absolute darkness. This occurs due to arcing between internal components. EPs will grow over time and will eventually kill the tube. Another type of blem called a bright spot is occasionally confused with EPs. Bright spots can look like an EP in lit scenarios, but when in complete darkness, bright spots go away and EPs stay. Second, vacuum loss. This is where the vacuum seal on the tube is lost, as literally in the title, causing a portion of the outer ring to go dark. These tubes will grow and eventually make the tube unusable. These are exceptionally bad as the blem gets worse and the tube degrades even while the NVD is off. I would avoid both of these types of blems. While many tubes like this have heavy discounts, in my opinion, it is just not worth it in the long run. Occasionally, you will run into Omni 14s being sold without manual gain. These generally have 10160A or C aviation tubes or converted 11769s. If they are 10160A or C, we do know the mins for them. If it's a 11769, regardless of its pigtail or not, we really just don't know. If a 14 is being sold without manual gain, it means at some point someone swapped out the tube or converted it. Some quick notes on purchasing. Do not buy from TNVC, Atom Industries, or NVN. All have sketchy track records for their own reasons. I can't say much due to YouTube, but quick personal research should help you find out where to buy and source these. Make sure a seller has vouchers, timestamps, and such before purchasing. This is a big purchase. Be smart and don't risk thousands. As nothing is perfect, let's quickly go over the cons before wrapping up. Most of all cons tie back to buying used. There is no warranty. If this thing dies, you're done for. You could sell the housing to recoup costs, but your tube is not warrantyable. These can be potentially hard to track down, but not uncommon. Be patient and do your research on sellers. All in all though, Omni 14s legitimately may be one of the best bang for buck NVDs available to purchase right now. Their price as of recording is more or less stable, meaning if you purchase one used, you should be able to sell it at roughly the same price you got it at. Of course, high-end tubes and brand new housings and glass are going to be better, but in this price range, it's hard to beat.
If you made it here, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. A lot of work went into this video, and major thanks to all the people that helped me get all the information needed for this video, and once again to the people that helped supply the parts used for the comparison. This has been in the works for a long time, and there's so much information that went into this and so much help that I'm sure I missed some things. So because of that, I made a frequently asked questions document, and that will be put in the description. So if you have any questions, I would check that out first. And if that doesn't answer your question, feel free to go into the comments and ask questions. I love the comments. I read pretty much every single one, and I respond to most. So get in there, ask a question, or provide some of your own experiences or information. I really like kind of building a community in the comments of, information to share with others. So feel free to ask questions. My life's really busy right now, so this is probably going to be the last major video for a solid stretch of time, sadly. But there are going to be a few more kind of, I'd definitely say interesting videos that are worth watching coming up. And then, in I would say around 2-ish months, hopefully we'll be back hitting it really hard, and there will be a whole bunch of really interested content coming down the pipeline. We're going to probably continue with this type of theme on things like, budget analog, what are like effective setups that aren't jank, like what can get you quote unquote duty grade stuff at the best cost. We're going to kind of keep on going in that line and discussing stuff like that. And I'm also going to try to get into the more historical and information side of night vision, just for those curious, because that stuff's fascinating and there's not a lot of resources out there, so I'd love to do that. Stuff like, this isn't very historical, but PVS7, that's what I've been running right now. It's a very interesting device, especially because they're so cheap right now. So stuff like that's going to be coming down the line. Once again, thank you so much if you made it here, and thank you so much for watching and for the support. Yeah, thank you guys.